Good morning and welcome to the Tuesday, April 14th Board of Supervisors meeting. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Supervisor Pine. Here. Supervisor Horsley.
Present.
Supervisor Slocum. Here. Supervisor Tessier. Here. President Groom.
Present. Whatever that word is. Yeah. So now is the time for public comment. This item is reserved for people who wish to address the board on any counted-related matter that is not otherwise on the meeting agenda, listed on the consent calendar, county manager's report, the regular agenda, board reports on the regular agenda. So would like to call Martin Fox, please.
Good morning, President Groom, members of the board, my fellow veteran supervisors Slocum and Mr. Maltby, and County Council Mr. Byers. Thank you for your service to the county. Please vote to implement Laura's Law now and bring new hope to family members of persons living with serious mental illness. Laura's Law is a compassionate, cost-effective civil proceeding that provides treatment to those incapable of consenting to treatment due to the nature of their illness without having to endanger them, our psychiatric emergency and inpatient nurses, or law enforcement officers. Laura's Law frees the seriously mentally ill to recover, live productive lives, and escape the dangerous revolving door of mental hospitals, jails, and the street, where they are more likely to become crime victims than criminals. Serious mental illness deprives persons who do not believe they are sick of their civil liberties, and the policies and procedures that the county health system uses to deny them the treatment they need to recover keeps them locked into an intellectually and morally bankrupt system where the only escape is the morgue. We just marked the first anniversary of the death of Errol Chang in Pacifica last month, and the first anniversary of the death of Yanira Serrano in Half Moon Bay is approaching. How many more people living with serious mental illness need to die before the stench of a corrupt and immoral mental health system overcome one's ability to ignore it is a question only you can answer. The civil and criminal immunities that the Lanner and Peacher Short Act continues to provide to those who deny treatment, except to persons who have the ability to volunteer for it, continues to corrupt our public health system. Please vote to either waive the health system's Lanner and Peacher Short Act civil and criminal immunities or join Los Angeles County, Orange County, Contra Costa County, Placer County, Mendocino County, Yolo County, Nevada County, and even the city and county of San Francisco by voting to implement Laura's Law. Thank you.
Catherine O'Malley.
Touch and go. Good morning, everyone. I'm addressing a situation that is kind of important. Medical records, electronic medical records. Who has access to them? Who meets them halfway and ought not to know that much? This day and age when a person becomes ill and it's anticipated, and then a cure can be provided. However, there are a lot of pieces missing in this puzzle. Biochem warfare, shall we say, meeting it halfway is not a cure. I question the amplification of Health Right 360 because everywhere I go, I'm followed. I went to WRA and got clean, and on the heels of that organization came Health Right 360. And then I'll go to another place, and then I'll be met halfway. And I don't need that. No one does. No one needs to be given a disease like a rat and then see if it can be cured. That is not medicine. It happened in El Salvador years ago. It's still happening now. So I hope you'll question the ethics of medical records. Thank you.
Tony Serrano?
If I might make a suggestion, perhaps the county manager, maybe there might be of assistance to the prior speaker.
Dear members of the Board of Supervisors, after the murder of my sister at the hands of an untrained police officer last year, I am left with nothing but pain, and emptiness that nothing can fill. People are left with questions and demands that we believe must be met in order to ensure public safety and community health. In this day, and to commemorate that will have been Yanira's 19th birthday, we present you with hundreds of signed postcards that were collected by friends, family, and concerned citizens of San Mateo County. Postcards demanding CIT training for 100% of public San Mateo County law enforcement, the creation of a fully empowered civilian oversight board to monitor and review San Mateo law enforcement, demanding the recruitment of officers that reflect the cultural makeup of county residents and reassignment of killer cop men true outside of Half Moon Bay. Even better, put him in jail. It is a shame that San Mateo County, being an advocate of social, political, and economic progress, is allowing these things to happen. It is a shame that San Mateo, being a progressive county, it is allowing officers to get away with murder. Could San Mateo County be the future leader in mental health? Let this be Yanira's birthday present, a mental health unit that responds and gives people with mental health disabilities the respect and care they deserve. Nothing can bring my sister back. My family has been grieving for the past 11 months. With the four demands we have raised, we hope that we can bring about substantially change that will at least give my sister short life, meaning, and hopefully prevent similar police shootings in the future. Out of respect for Yanira's life and those of us here today, we expect and demand that the Board of Supervisors address all four demands as soon as possible. I will do my best to make sure another family don't have to go through this. I cannot bring my sister back, but what I can do is fight.
Thank you, Mr. Serrano. Michael Stogner?
Thank you, Supervisors, for this time. My name is Michael Stogner. I'm from San Carlos. I'm honored to be here to honor and celebrate the life of Yanira Sereno Garcia. She would have been 19 years old this week. I'm asking you, the Supervisors, to create a county policy. And I don't know what the name of it should be, but it would be something like, and I know you're already interested in this, it would be something like, we don't harm the residents who call 911 for help. The reality is mistakes were made at our 911 dispatch on June 4th, 2014. I brought these mistakes to your attention. I asked you to address them immediately because I felt that was the quickest place to fix something. So with respect to CIT training, which I support everything that the family is asking for. I don't know if it can ever happen 100% trained because people, so I understand all that. I'm not asking to fix all that. But what I am asking is that for the people who answer our phones, the very first line, I'm asking that they be trained in basic communication skills. And I know that once you listen to the tape, you'll understand what I'm talking about. And then from there, have 911 trained in CIT training, the people there, so they would have a better understanding. Because I know this is a complicated problem, but I believe San Mateo County can be safer. I know you're the 5 people to do it, with the help of Mr. Maltby and with the county assistant manager. And I'll tell you what, I just want to celebrate Yanira today. So I want this to be a good day and a good day for San Mateo County. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stogner. Cesar Sanchez.
Good morning, everybody. I was just a regular citizen until this happened in our community. I remember until today, we used to have such a great relationship with Hammond Bay PD. The sheriffs came, and my family and my community has been treated with so much racism, like if we were in the 40s. And today I'm asking you guys to do something about it. For our community not to get treated the way they have been. My understanding is that the sheriff department people, they're working in jail for 6 months. And they go outside and work for 6 months. They're working with criminals in jail, and that's how they're treating our community. Besides CIT training, we should really train the people that are supposed to serve and protect us. They harassed us. This can't be happening anymore. I was just a regular citizen until this happened. I saw my kind being pulled over all the time, being sent to court, getting arrested. This can't be happening. They came not to protect our community. This is a coast side community. We're not a threat to anybody. It's just a working class. So I'm asking you guys today to give those officers better training, or to do something above and beyond to protect the coast siders. They're just there to work. They're not there to do anything else. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Jim McGarry.
My name is Jim McGarry. I'm a resident of Pacifica. I'm also the director of the Sister Dorothy Stang Center for Social Justice and Community Engagement at Notre Dame de Namur University. And I'm here on behalf of the university. I'm here on behalf of my students, many of whom last fall, on an encuentro, a study of the lives of immigrants in our county, met with Yanira's family, had lunch with them, and heard their story, and have vowed to continue to learn about this case, especially in the context of the larger problem of highly questionable law enforcement violence around the country. This is our local case, and we will be deeply involved in it at the university and continue to be so until we receive the justice that this county and the people of this county deserve. We'll continue to advocate for justice for Yanira specifically and her family, and we stand 100% with them, and 100% behind the reforms that Tony mentioned in terms of mental health training and community policing and all the things that are listed on the postcards that many of my students signed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGarry. Matt Chang.
Thank you, Board of Supervisors. I'm here in support of Tony Serrano. My name is Matt Chang, and I'm the brother of Errol Chang, who was murdered in Pacifica by the Pacifica Police and the Daly City SWAT team just a few months before Yanira was gunned down. My brother had been diagnosed by San Mateo County in 2008 with schizoaffective disorder while jailed in Redwood City for an incident that occurred during his first severe paranoid episode. Our family was offered very little support from this county, who seemed more interested in labeling my brother a felon than recognizing him as a person with severe mental illness. In the weeks before his death, Errol tried to seek help for his condition at least one clinic in San Mateo County and was turned away and told that he did not need help, completely disregarding the seriousness of his previous diagnosis. Just like Yanira and her family, our family was failed by the San Mateo mental health system and the police of San Mateo County. There are people in this county with serious mental illness living on the streets, populating our jails instead of receiving care in mental hospitals, and being murdered by our police. How many more people need to die? How many more families need to be torn apart before this broken system is addressed? The money that is budgeted to treat mental illness goes to where it's needed most, and someone is held accountable for what only can be described as a lack of compassion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chang. Belinda Arriga. Belinda. Okay. Karen Larson.
As a citizen of San Mateo County for over 40 years, I'd just like to say that I was felt deeply harmed and injured myself and for the Serrano family about Yanira's killing. And I would just like to see that San Mateo County do these 4 changes that the Serrano family has asked. And you've heard what the changes are. And I was in the mental health office because I work with the county, and I saw these new mental health emergency guidelines in this card that's just come out, and this is a direct action from Yanira's death. And I want to say that while I'm very happy to see this as a baby step, it's a first step, these cards are not so helpful because when you open them it says it's what to say when calling 911 for a mental health emergency. I'm calling about a mental health emergency and request a CIT officer. We don't have enough CIT officers to make all these requests if someone really seriously needs help. So we need to beef that up and get CIT training for every officer that we have. And how about us being the first county in this country? We're one of the wealthiest counties. We have so much to offer, so many great companies here, so many wonderful, just amazing coastside residents are wonderful. How about us being the first county to make this happen, and we could teach the rest of the U.S. how to do this? I think that would be the bigger step to take. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Larson. Deborah Lee.
Good morning, supervisors. My name is Reverend Deborah Lee. I'm a United Church of Christ minister, and I coordinate a group here in the peninsula called the Peninsula Interfaith Coalition on Immigration. We've been meeting for the last 4 years, once a month. This last fall, we organized a journey, a 2-day immersion journey to explore the borders within San Mateo County. That we realized we didn't have to go to the U.S.-Mexico border, that there were many immigrants within our own county, and we wanted to explore more deeply what some of the divisions and borders that there were that exist in our own county. We went mostly with residents from Redwood City and San Mateo County, or San Mateo, the freeway side of the county, and went over to the other side, to the coastal side, where we learned about the borders, of course, the differences and disparities between access to housing, jobs, education, but also, importantly, the difference around access to what people felt was really protection from their law enforcement and from the willingness and the ability to call and to believe that law enforcement worked for them, to not have fear when they called 911 or called law enforcement for help. We met with the Serrano family, because this was, of course, very recently after Yanira's death, and we were very moved. I want to just impress upon you that it's not just the Serrano family that has been affected, but an entire community in our county has witnessed what has happened, and they are waiting to see what our leaders will do to respond. I think we have a tremendous opportunity, the community here in San Mateo County and our leaders, to make something good come out of this tragedy, if there can be anything good. And I ask that that be CIT training for all on-duty law enforcement out in the field, so that everybody in this community can have trust and feel that they are protected and that this county works for them. I just want to, sorry I was a little bit late. I understand you've already received some of these postcards, but I want to just have some more to bring here.
Thank you, Reverend Lee. Pepper Black.
Because of the limited time we have here, I'm only going to focus on one of the points that we've all made here as part of this community. And I too join with everyone else in hoping that you will join the strong leadership in this country that's looking at this as a universal problem, and that you do what you can to make sure that the law enforcement in this county has the kind of training that they need and deserve to have, and that they be able to practice safety in community policing in a culturally aware way that is not happening now. And that this CIT training be the full 40 hours for all dispatchers, for all law enforcement officers, and for all their supervisors. That's been deemed what is necessary in order for the officers to understand what it is truly like to practice this in the field. And this also comes with refreshers every year. And I have witnessed myself as a crisis worker, CIT-trained officers who handled almost a blueprint of the same incident that happened in the community in Moonridge. And not only was the knife larger and the person volatile and much more threatening, but the officers handled this in a way that was kind and was swift, de-escalated the situation, and brought the woman to the crisis unit where she was 5150'd and got hospitalization and got help. This is necessary to save lives, and I hope that you'll consider to ask you that you truly commit to listening to our requests. And I know that in this busy, distracted world that we live in, it is hard to truly focus. And often we don't have the experience as humans of being truly listened to. But I hope that you will open your hearts and listen to every word that piece is being said here by all of us. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Black. Alice Linsmeyer.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the chance to be able to speak. My name is Alice Linsmeyer, and I have been accompanying the family since Janita was shot on June 3rd last year. You can all imagine, I imagine you all feel the suffering of what this must be like, and I've been very close to it with the mother, Carmen, Janita's brother, Tony, and Janita's father, Ignacio. I feel like as I'm standing with them, I'm standing at the foot of the cross, watching extreme suffering, and there's nothing. I feel so so helpless. And so I just want to say we can and need to do something about this together. All all the time that I've been with the family, what they've just asked for over and over is for a way to ensure that this never happens again. And I think we can all agree on that. We do not want this to happen again. I was at a Moonridge meeting where Supervisor Horsley was there and Sheriff Monks, and I had understood, I believe it was Officer Hoffman, said that CIT training and PERT training is being offered to officers about 3 times a year, about 35 at a time. And I just have to say, if this is not going to happen again, that's not enough. We need to find a way to get more officers trained and find funding. I don't know if Measure A is a possibility of a place to get funding or some way to prioritize funding so that all officers can be trained in this, because these mental health calls, I understand about 50% of calls are mental health calls. So if we can get more officers trained much more expediently, that is one way to say this has less chance of happening again. So let's work together as community, as Board of Supervisors, as sheriffs on this urgent issue. And I understand that you say not 100%, but we can get very close to 100%. It could be it could be part of the trainer's orientation. So I want to say anyone who also wants to stand up and agree to give this gift to Yanira for her birthday tomorrow of CIT training and what we have advised, please stand up.
Thank you, Ms. Lansmeyer. Eric DeBode.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Supervisor Horsley. Thank you so much for hearing us. Obviously, you can tell there's been a lot of community organizing and meeting, and a lot of people are very concerned about this issue. My name's Eric DeBode. I am the director of the Catholic Worker in Half Moon Bay, and I've worked with the homeless for about 30 years. I've worked on Skid Row in Los Angeles, Tacoma, Washington, and here. I've had a lot of experience, very positive experience, working with police, sheriffs, and mental health workers. And I've been in situations myself which have been frightening, where potential violence would have occurred with folks who were mentally ill or dual diagnosis on the streets. I just want to say I stopped them. You can't see why I stopped them. It's training. I was able to diffuse and de-escalate situations because we've gone through training to learn how to relate with folks who have mental illness and who are vulnerable in ways that are very helpful. We entrust officers with weapons, and we need to also train them to deal with a variety of situations. I think this incident is really showing us so clearly how important it is that if we're going to give them these responsibilities and lay upon them the burden of dealing with crisis situations, we need to fund the training that they deserve so that this doesn't happen to any other citizen in our county. I would like to ask if Belinda Arriaga could follow me. She was late this morning because of traffic.
Thank you, Mr. DeBode.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Arriaga?
Good morning, Board of Supervisors. Thank you for having us here today. I'm a social worker that has 16 years of working in mental health, especially working with Latino mental health, and particularly working in my community of Half Moon Bay and at UC Berkeley. And today I come to you just thinking about what Yanira would want us to say if she were here today, to be able to celebrate her birthday alive and to be here in front of you all. And one of the things that I've been witnessing, because I've been with the family since day one, is really the understanding and the awareness that we really need to call to action to have an independent police review board. And I know that they have that in San Jose, and I know that it's a move across the country, and I think that it's time for San Mateo County to really consider the importance and the urgency in having a fair and just law enforcement review board that can take a look at cases when citizens want to come in and make a concern or a complaint that is fair and that really looks at all areas, that's independent just from the DA investigator or from the Sheriff's Department itself. I was able to witness a process that this family went through, and I can tell you that we also need to call for victims' rights when something happens in terms of getting them fair and equal access and treatment, because the way that the family was treated by the law enforcement in terms of being able to get even the day when they came to let them know that the deputy was no longer going to be charged, it was such a painful moment for the family. I was there when the DA investigator told them, and the way that they were informed and the way that they were told was really hurtful, very painful. And even though it wasn't the news that the family wanted, it wasn't that at all that I'm talking about. It was a way in which it was done. I've gone numerous times in Half Moon Bay to go and have people want to make a concern about the police, and there's no process other than to inform the Sheriff's Department itself, which is the actual agency that we're trying to voice a concern. So I kindly ask you that you really consider an independent review board to consider these cases that come forward that are so important for our citizens of San Mateo County. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Arriaga. Thomas Atwood.
Good morning, Supervisors. My name is Thomas Atwood, and I am not a resident of San Mateo County, but I am a co-founder and organizer with Fool's Mission, which is a consciousness-raising ministry of supportive companionship here in San Mateo County. We see hundreds of people, immigrants and citizens alike, because our core mission is to bring together people who have access to citizenship and the privileges thereof and people who don't. I was on Reverend Lee's Encounter bus trip through the county in October. I met Tony Serrano there, and I'm here to advocate for the CIT training because although I retired from IBM in June after 8 years as a technical writer for mid-tier database systems, I've also successfully managed bipolar disorder for 35 years. And when I look at a situation like the one with Yanira, I know in my heart that I could have accessed better treatment by virtue simply of my height, my whiteness, and my maleness. And I'm asking the county to do something about this. We are here to ask for your help. I had dinner with a friend who's an adolescent psych nurse at St. Mary's Hospital in the city. And her first reaction to hearing the story of Yanira's shooting within a matter of seconds after the arrival of the officer, my friend, this nurse, handles troubled teens every day as part of her job. She has CIT training. She's in her 60s, she's older than me, she has a bad back, and her reaction was, I could have handled that situation. I don't want to say much more than that, except that we support the CIT training. We've been in touch with Dave Hall at Training for Safety, and we understand that they provide training in mental health and critical incident stress management and that like kind of training. And we're also aware that they don't apply training along the crisis intervention team model, and that the crisis intervention training model not only includes mental health and tactical response information, but also covers collaborative systems information and policy development and guidance focused toward a goal of creating a working crisis intervention team. We need your help on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Atwood. That concludes the public comment period. Do you have any more speakers, Madam Clerk? Okay. Thank you very much.
Through the chair, can I make just a quick comment? It's just
Certainly.
when people talk about CIT training, actually CIT training was actually invented by the Sheriff's Department. And the original people were Chris Cipolla from mental health, Deb Bazan, who just recently retired, a former deputy, Will Pickens, who also had a master's degree in counseling. So it's been an ongoing program. It does, in fact, it's extremely helpful. So I have no objection to asking the sheriff to actually increase the number of classes to make sure that more officers get through it. But I also want to point out that I did go with the sheriff to the community, to both Pacifica as well as to Half Moon Bay. And, you know, one of the things that the sheriff did create afterward, he created with a mental health unit with the Sheriff's Department. There's a deputy, Jim Hoffman, who also does some of the CIT training, and there is also a connection with our mental health department. county's long had a SMART team to respond to incidents with people who were mentally ill. It's a specially trained person from AMR. They do, in fact, do community policing. It's my experience with Moonridge is the deputies out there do speak Spanish. So I think they do an excellent job. They also have a big Sheriff's Activities League that reaches hundreds of kids. And I've seen them interact with kids in the community. I think they do a fabulous job. You know, in the county, we've created recently a crisis intervention center where somebody could come, instead of going to a psych emergency ward or to a jail, they can go to that center. And I know we have a mental health court called Pathway. So I think the county's put millions of dollars into mental health. And I know the Sheriff's Department is really working hard at really increasing the amount of officers who are CIT trained.
Thank you, Supervisor Horsley. We will now go to the presentation and awards section of our agenda. No, we're not going to do that yet. We're going to set the agenda and approve the consent calendar.
I'll make a motion to set the agenda and to approve the consent agenda items.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. By adoption of that, that means the consent calendar has been approved. Now we'll go to item number 1, presentation of a proclamation designating April 2015 as National Volunteer Month. Supervisor Tissier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Today I wanted to take a moment during National Volunteer Month to recognize the outstanding volunteers here in San Mateo County. The Points of Light Foundation first sponsored National Volunteer Month in 1974 as a nationwide effort to recognize and promote volunteer activity in the United States of America and around the world. During the month of April, individuals are using National Volunteer Month as an opportunity to donate their time to be at the center of social change by providing compassionate assistance to some of society's most vulnerable populations, while at the same time building community. Each year, nearly 63 million adults in the United States volunteer through an organization totaling 7.7 billion hours of volunteer activity with an estimated value of $173 billion worth of service. Here in San Mateo County, we have a thriving and vibrant corps of volunteers, most notably the individuals who volunteer their time and expertise through the volunteer programs of our Department of Parks and Recreation, the Sheriff's Volunteer Force, community-based organizations on the peninsula, our own San Mateo County boards and commissions, and many other organizations which contribute to the overall health and well-being of our San Mateo County community. Individuals, families, and organizations are encouraged to use the many resources available to them to explore ongoing volunteer events in their neighborhood through schools, congregations, local government, or by exploring websites such as the national www.serve.gov and www.pointsoflight.org. And today we have with us Chris Coe from the Sheriff's Office of Emergency Services. Chris has organized the volunteers at the past couple of disaster preparedness days. And I have to tell you, this is a very big feat since there are thousands of people that attend the event, and so it's important that we have the quality and well-trained volunteers. I'd like to present this proclamation to Chris this morning and allow her to say a few words. And with that, I move to proclaim April as National Volunteers Month in San Mateo County.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
On behalf of our almost 500 volunteers within the Sheriff's Office, I would like to thank the President and the Honorable Board of Supervisors and Mr. Maltby for this proclamation. I'd also like to thank Sheriff Greg Monks, who has been a strong supporter along with his command staff for all of our volunteers throughout the county. And within the last 3 years, we have increased our volunteer service hours almost triple. So again, we're big supporters of all of San Mateo County, and thank you so much.
Want to say anything in conclusion?
No, just thank you. I do know when I talked to Chris at an event, we were talking about the fact they had 500 volunteers and 400 are actual active volunteers. I mean, that's huge. That's tremendous. And they do an excellent job. I see them everywhere. So thank you.
Thank you. Item number 2 is presentation of a proclamation for National Crime Victims Week. Supervisor Slocum?
Thank you, Madam President. Every April, the Office of Victims of Crime helps lead communities throughout the country in their annual observances of National Crime Victims' Rights Week by promoting victim rights and honoring crime victims and those who advocate on their behalf. Every year, Americans are the victims of more than 26 million crimes. People have their lives changed forever by crimes. They are our families, our neighbors, our friends, and our colleagues. Here in San Mateo County, the Board of Supervisors is proclaiming the week of April 19th through the 25th as National Crime Victims' Rights Week to raise awareness of victims' rights, reach out to crime victims, listen to what they need, and help them rebuild their lives. Just a couple of statistics from the District Attorney's Office that'll help us better understand the importance of this proclamation today. Over 2,924 victim referrals were processed in the last year from law enforcement. The DA's office had contact with over 3,429 new victims. 663 of those were victims of domestic violence. 654 were victims of assault and battery. And 582 were victims of sexual assault, both adults and children. Compensation claims for payment of crime-related expenses were filed for approximately 623 victims. And finally, the DA's office provided resources and referral assistance to some 663 victims. With that, I'd like to make a motion that we designate April 19th through the 25th as National Crime Victims' Rights Week.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. And if I could, I'd invite District Attorney Steve Wagstaff and Chief Deputy District Attorney Karen Guidotti.
Before we begin, we have a public comment on this item. So, Mr. Fox?
Good morning again, President Groom and members of the board. Thank you for your service to the county. I'm speaking as a victim of domestic violence myself. Thank you for including victims with mental illness among those who face challenges in finding appropriate services. Victims living with mental illness who do not believe they are sick are challenged in finding appropriate services in San Mateo County because the mental health treatment eligibility criteria used by the health system limits treatment to those who volunteer for it. Victims living with mental illness who do not believe they are sick are not even considered stakeholders. Consequently, they have no voice in a system that insists on trying to turn law enforcement officers into armed social workers who have keys to the entrance of a mental health treatment system that criminalizes them and makes their recovery even more difficult and costly. The institutional corruption of the State Department of Mental Health has been abolished, and the institutional corruption of the so-called Mental Health Oversight and Accountability Commission has been laid bare by all, for all to see, thanks to the state auditor and the Little Hoover Commission. Please take the opportunity that this proclamation presents and take a long look at the role the policies and procedures of the county health system played in that old, intellectually and morally corrupt mental health care culture and reduce the challenges that victims with mental illness face in finding appropriate services by voting to implement Laura's Law now and join Los Angeles County, Orange County, Contra Costa County, Placer County, Mendocino County, Yolo County, Nevada County, and even the city and county of San Francisco in making our community a better place for all to live. Thank you.
And now I would like to invite District Attorney Steve Wagstaff and Chief Deputy District Attorney Karen Guidotti to receive this proclamation on behalf of all crime victims. And to say a few words if you'd like, of course.
So, good morning, Honorable Board of Supervisor members and Mr. Malpe. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Becky Arredondo, and I'm the manager with the Victim Services Division of the San Mateo County District Attorney's Office. On the behalf of the Victim Services Division, I am honored today to receive the proclamation designating the week from April 19th through the 25th as the National Crime Victims' Right Week of 2015. Each year, on a national basis, a week is set aside as an annual observance to bring communities together and educate the public about victims' rights, protections, as well as services. National Crime Victims' Right Weeks provides an opportunity to commemorate and honor crime victims, celebrate their courage, and acknowledge their struggle for justice. This year, we emphasize our vision of reaching and supporting all victims with the theme, Engaging Communities, Empowering Victims. The 2015 theme reminds communities that by coming together to support victims, we help our community to become a safer and more supportive place. Through community action and service, we all become stronger. As you have demonstrated through your own work, engaging community leaders, organizations, and local partners is critical to meeting victims where they are and empowering them throughout the healing process as they become survivors. By engaging community leaders and organizations in the work to support crime victims, we provide a new avenue for victims and enhance our ability to serve them. Through working with community leaders and organizations, we can leverage existing community resources to understand the needs of underserved victims and that impact of victimization. Ultimately, engaging the entire community, we will enable us to reach more victims and expand their options for services. Only 30 years ago, crime victims had virtually no rights and no assistance. Today, the nation has made dramatic progress in securing rights, protections, and services for our victims. Every state has now enacted crime victims' right laws, and all have established victim compensation programs. More than 10,000 victim services agencies now help victims throughout the nation. 30 years ago, in 1984, Congress passed the Bipartisan Victims of Crime Act, more commonly known as VOCA. VOCA created a national fund to ease victim suffering. VOCA is financed not by taxpayers, but by fines and penalties paid by offenders. VOCA Fund supports victim services and compensation programs which pay many of victims' out-of-pocket expenses resulting from the crime, such as counseling, funeral expenses, and lost wages. Our victims' right advocates have scored remarkable victories over the last 3 decades. As we move forward, we are increasingly expanding our services as previously underserved victim populations, such as victims of color, victims of elder abuse, LGBTQ victims, as well as human labor and sex trafficking victims. I would like to remind all of you today that our Victim Services Division of the District Attorney's Office here in San Mateo is here to help victims and so that they are not alone and they can receive comprehensive services. In the event that you are interested in obtaining specific information about the services we provide to victims, please help yourselves to Victim Services Division brochures placed on the table outside of the Board of Supervisors chamber. On this note, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the extremely dedicated San Mateo County Victim Services employees who work day in and day out to assist numerous victims of violent crimes in our county. For the Victim Services Division employees that could join us, I would like to request that you raise your hands or stand so that you can receive proper acknowledgement today. I would like to close by stating that our Victim Services Division is extremely appreciative of the never-ending support that our Board of Supervisors and our County Manager provides. Thank you for your time this morning, and thank you once again for this proclamation.
Thank you very much. Go to item number 3 now, which is a presentation of a proclamation designating 2015 as a year of commemoration for the 100th anniversary of the Armenian Genocide. Supervisor Pine?
Thank you, President Groom. I am bringing forward today a motion to proclaim today, April 14, 2015, as Armenian Genocide Commemoration Day in San Mateo County to recognize the 100th anniversary of the beginning of the Armenian Genocide. By adopting this proclamation in our county, we'll join many other cities, counties, and states in formally recognizing the historic fact of the Armenian genocide. Unfortunately, the denial of this event remains, as even the U.S. government has yet to formally recognize this tragic chapter in history. It is critical that we ensure the veracity of history and in doing so help prevent another genocide in the world. So I'd like to move approval of the resolution.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And we have some members of the community who will come up and receive the resolution and may have a few words. So I'd like to invite Mr. Kachikazanian, who is a board member of the Armenian National Committee of America, Ms. Judy Gindirian, a Western Regional Board Member for the Armenian Relief Society, and John Kivranian, my friend and president of the Broadway Burlingame Business Improvement District. So if you'd like to join us.
Thank you, San Mateo County Board of Supervisors, for once again standing on the side of truth and justice and remembering the events that took place between 1915 and 1923, known as the Armenian Genocide, committed by the Turkish government. The consequences of failing to acknowledge and hold responsible perpetrators of such crimes against humanity can be devastating, as the case just 25 years after the near annihilation of the Armenians and other Christians, when Hitler rationalized the destruction of the Jews by saying, "Who, after all, remembers the annihilation of the Armenians today?" We cannot afford to remain silent because the injustice rendered to the victims and survivors and risk that it may embolden would-be perpetrators of genocide. It is heartening to have you, our community leaders, stand tall and speak the truth, along with a growing number of nations, states, municipalities, organizations, and individuals, practically on the eve of the centennial commemoration. On behalf of the Armenian American community of San Mateo and the Greater Bay Area, I extend our deepest appreciation. I've also given the supervisors the pin that I'm wearing. It's Forget Me Not, and it symbolizes the genocide. The center on the Forget Me Not opens up, and it's the eternal flame that is in Armenia. Again, thank you again, and Supervisor Pine, we have a book for you by author Chris Bojalian. It's The Sandcastle Girls.
That's very nice of you.
Armenia.
Very kind of you. Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you, Supervisor Pine. Thank you very much for all of you being with us today. We'll go back to you, Dave.
Okay.
2015 Child Abuse Prevention Month.
We also have a resolution today to mark April 2015 as National Child Abuse Prevention Month, which is recognized throughout the country. I have the opportunity to serve on the Child Abuse Prevention Council of San Mateo, and so I've learned about this, about the tragedy of child abuse. It's something that we work hard in this county to try to eliminate, and we have a lot of good people focused on that. I mean, I think we've all become aware of the impact of trauma on young people, on children, that it's not only the tragedy of the event itself at that time and place, but the impact it has on a child's brain and his or her development. So I'm pleased today to bring forward this motion to recognize April 2015 as National Child Abuse Prevention Month.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we have Renee Zimmerman, who will receive the proclamation. She is the coordinator for our Child Abuse Prevention Council and also preschool leader in our county. We have a special surprise guest in just a moment. Actually, we could.
Thank you, President Groom and honorable supervisors and staff. I have some blue ribbon pins to add to your pin collection. And if you already have one, just pass one on to somebody to wear for the rest of the month of April. The Children's Collaborative Action Team, or CCAT, which is the designated Child Abuse Prevention Council, continues to regard strengthening families as the primary focus for much of our prevention activities, in which currently 9 nonprofits and 2 county programs are being funded to assist in those efforts. We're also finishing our second year providing child sexual abuse prevention training to parents and community members, with the last 4 trainings that we did held in Spanish. We're seeing a rise in the mandated reporter trainings that are being held, a 52% increase over last year, and over 2,400 individuals trained. And just recently, we're reconnecting with the Fatherhood Collaborative. We're hopefully going to be partnering on future advocacy and awareness efforts. And finally, a brand new area of focus for CCAT will be around raising awareness on the topic of commercially sexually exploited children, or CSEC as it's known. You may be aware in June 2014, Governor Brown signed new legislation into law. This was Senate Bill 855, providing funding for prevention, intervention, and other services for sexually trafficked children. And through this new law, created a CSEC program to be administered by the State Department of Social Services. A major focus of the law is the effort to decriminalize the victims of child sex trafficking by allowing them to be served through the dependency system, rather than the juvenile justice system. And this squarely puts sexually trafficked children under the purview of the child welfare system for the first time. So counties such as ours electing to participate in the new CSEC program will receive additional funding for such purposes. County child welfare agencies, as of January of this year, were required, in order to receive funds, to develop local interagency protocols for serving CSEC youth. When I first learned about the new regulations at our Bay Area Regional Child Abuse Council Coalition, I came back to this county to kind of find out what had been going on. And while many counties around the state found themselves scrambling to try to pull together their required local teams, here in San Mateo County, we had, in fact, a team already in place and fully functioning for several years. This team was due in large part to the efforts of one individual, Denicia Cormier, an emergency response social worker supervisor who's with me this morning. And Denicia was moved by the tragedy of often forgotten victims of child sex trafficking, and in her own time pulled together folks from various county departments and agencies who in one way or another would come in contact with victims or potential victims. I've been singularly impressed with their passion and efforts in this area, and I asked her to share a few words about the CSEC team with you.
Thank you so much, Renee. So I just wanted to come by just to say a few words about our program. So I've been a social worker now for about 7 years with San Mateo County and promoted to supervisor the last 2 years. So when I first came on board, I was working with a long-term foster care unit. So they were all adolescents, and the majority of my caseload were CSEC victims. I took the initiative to start a group that just started with 2 of my cohort, and has now progressed into some 30-odd volunteers from law enforcement within our county, the district attorney's office, victims of crime, behavioral health and recovery services, juvenile probation, and child welfare. We focus on awareness and prevention. We focus on youth who are already in the system that are either juvenile probation or juvenile dependents. And each year we hold a girls empowerment conference. This past March, we served 78 girls in a one-day conference where we were able to give them information about self-esteem building, awareness, how to evade signs that would make them more vulnerable for trafficking and things of that nature. So one youth in particular I really wanted to highlight today that I've been able to work with the entire 7 years of my career in San Mateo County, who is a product of East Palo Alto and was trafficked both in our county and Santa Clara County, and was able to eventually testify against her perpetrator. She's now a young adult and she's thriving in a part of our AB-12 or non-minor dependent program now with the county, and is one of our youth advocates that we look to for guidance in our building around our committee. So I just want to thank you guys for coming out and make sure that everybody's aware of this very important topic, especially with the Super Bowl coming to Santa Clara County next year. And as I think a lot of us know, many of the high power sporting events are very frequent trafficking forums. And so we want to make sure that everybody's aware and our community is on board with supporting our youth. Thank you.
So Dente, before you sit down, we wanted to thank you for your important work and your initiative. Preventing trafficking is a major priority for this board, and we have a combination for you, again, to recognize and thank you for your efforts.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dave. Go to item number 5 now, which is Housing Department. Conduct a public hearing to consider adopting a resolution approving the Housing Authority of San Mateo County to move the Moving to Work annual plan.
Good morning, President Groom, members of the board, Mr. Malpe, and Mr. Byers. The matter before you is to hold a public hearing and to consider approval of the Housing Authority's MTW plan. It's in effect the Housing Authority's annual plan. And just by way of introduction, the plan does include all of the several score of initiatives that the Housing Authority has proposed and had enacted over the last number of years, and that continue. This year, because we've done many of those and they're ongoing, we don't really have any major new initiatives, but in the plan is a couple of important items. One is we had a permission to use up to $8 million of Housing Authority funds for investment in the construction of new affordable housing, and we are asking for that to be increased to $10 million, and we have those reserves. And the second is your board voted a couple of months ago for a plan amendment for something called the Leasing Success Program, and this is because our voucher holders are having such a hard time finding available apartments in the county. With your support, we applied to HUD to enact this program, which allows us to use housing assistance money for landlord incentives, security deposit assistance, and for housing locator service. So HUD has been positive about that. They haven't approved it yet. We expect that approval imminently, and the Housing Authority has already issued an RFP for the housing locator service. So with that, if you have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lowell. Are there questions? Okay. This is a public hearing, so we are opening the public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to speak to this item?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, now we will need a motion to adopt the resolution.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Lowell. Item number 6 will be held at 1:30, study session to talk about safe medicine disposal. So now we'll go to item number 7. Supervisor Tissier?
Thank you, President Groom. This is a great day. I'm excited to be to have worked with the Environmental Health Department over the last 6 months with Heather Porcher, Kamisha, and the entire team over there. In fact, why don't you stand up? You guys have done a yeoman's job in doing a lot of outreach in the community. Oh, look at how shy they are. They stand up for 2
Up and down.
They've been working over the last 6 months out in the community, talking to restaurant owners and food servers, et cetera, to talk to them about idea of this placarding system that we want to initiate here in San Mateo County. The green, yellow, red food placarding system effectively communicates to the public whether the food facility complies with food safety principles and enables diners to make informed choices about where to eat and encourages food facilities to improve their food safety practices. Today we have Heather Forche, who is the Director of Environmental Health, and she is going to make a presentation to kind of lay out this placarding program. And my hope is that we can join the 9 other counties around the Bay Area that have adopted this placarding ordinance to give it some consistency throughout the Bay Area. But before I introduce Heather, because she'll probably get introduced by Jean, because Jean's actually standing at the podium, I think we'll start with the Director of Health Services and let her say a few words first. Jean?
Thank you, Supervisor Tissier, and thank you, everyone, for sticking with us and getting to this agenda item. I'm so very pleased to be here today to introduce Heather Forche and the team that has worked so hard with the support of Supervisor Tissier on this restaurant placarding ordinance. This is a very big day for the health system, and in particular for environmental health, as we'll be back here again at 1:30. But what I really want to call out, and thank you for your support, is that if you think about the mission of the health system, our job is to help San Mateo County residents live longer and better lives. The most important way we can do that is through prevention. So this morning, this ordinance is another great step forward in a long line of steps that San Mateo County has taken to really push the prevention agenda forward. If we can prevent people from getting sick in the first place, clearly that's the very best thing we can do. And I'm so very proud of the work of the Environmental Health Division in this area, again, with the support of Supervisor Tissier. So with that, Heather Forche, come on up.
Good morning, President Groom, members of the board, Mr. Maltby, Mr. Byers, Heather Forche, Director of Environmental Health Services. So we're here to talk to you about a proposed restaurant placarding program. So what is placarding? Well, placards are simply signs that reflect the results of the environmental health inspections that we do at the food facilities that are permitted by us. The placarding program that we're proposing would be very simple in concept. Colors of a stoplight, green, yellow, and red. Our inspection program itself, which is based on safe food handling practices, isn't going to change. The only thing that you will see, the only difference will be that we will be presenting a placard at the end of our inspection that will reflect the results of the inspection itself. So why are we recommending this? Well, first of all, as Jean mentioned, our primary goal is to prevent foodborne illness. And we think that this is a great tool to help restaurant operators keep their employees focused and keep everyone's eye on the ball by ensuring that they keep that green placard in mind. The placards will help the restaurant operators showcase their commitment to food safety. When you see a green in the window, the consumer will know that their priority has been to prevent foodborne illness. And we think that the consumer will find this green, yellow, red system easy to use, easy to understand. So the placards will also have a SKU on them that will indicate where the consumer can take their cell phones, scan it, and it will be sent. They'll be sent to our website where all of the inspection reports will be posted if they want to read the gory details of the inspection report. Also, we want to be part of a regional approach. As Supervisor Tissier mentioned, there are 9 other jurisdictions that are currently or are about to be using the green, yellow, red system. And we think that this will be helpful to restaurant owners that have multiple businesses across county lines. It'll help them to train their employees uniformly. We also think this will be beneficial to the consumer who may live in one county and work in another county and have family in yet another jurisdiction. We want to advise everyone that our commitment is to make sure that every restaurant gets a green. We don't want a spread. We want everyone to have a green. We want 100%. That's our goal. So why this approach? Well, the Centers for Disease Control identified a number of practices in restaurants that contribute to foodborne illness. And I've listed a couple of examples above. The first would be the lack of water or the ability to wash hands. The number one cause of foodborne illness is the inability to wash hands, followed shortly by the inability to cool food carefully. We've got rodent and roach infestation, sewage backup, improper preparation of food. All of these contribute to foodborne illness, and they will reflect the color of the placard. So what have we been doing since October? We've held over a dozen outreach meetings seeking input from the permitted community and answering questions. In fact, the last week we had 120 vendors from San Francisco Airport attend our final meeting, and we've received nothing but positive feedback at our community meetings. We've reached out to the California Restaurant Association, the Golden Gate Restaurant Association, city managers, chambers, and the National Latino Council. So what's next? Assuming that the board members approve this system, we'll be conducting the next phase of our outreach. The next phase will include teaching all of our permitted facilities about how to get and maintain that green placard. We want to make sure that everyone understands how the placarding system works, and so we'll be holding outreach meetings both in the classroom at our campus as well as out in the field. We'll be conducting one-on-one training. We will be also conducting dry run inspections over the course of several months. So after our routine inspection, we'll let the restaurant operator know what they would get if we were issuing placards. Any business that would have gotten a yellow will be devoting more resources and training to help prepare them for the next stage. We also want to educate the public. We want to make sure the public realizes what a green and a yellow and a red placard mean. We don't intend to use this placard, and there has been questions. We don't want the consumer to believe that it's a reflection of the quality of the food, but merely the food safety. And finally, assuming that the board approves it, we would begin placarding starting in January of 2016. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, I just want to thank Supervisor Tissier for her leadership on this and the team, but especially want to call out the fact that I'm very pleased about the QR code that's on the placards, which will allow a person to use their smartphone to scan the QR code and then go to your website for additional information, because I was at a restaurant, I won't tell you which one, but it was up in the north actually. But it had a inspection report that was on a carbon copy like paper, and it was posted right there by the maitre d's spot, but you couldn't read it. It was so hard to read, and I really wanted to read it. So the QR code, I think it's going to be a big help to consumers. So thank you for doing that, everybody.
Supervisor Pine?
Yeah, I've had the same experience in the South County reading those forms.
Oh.
Because I'm very curious. I do want to I try to read everything that comes within my vision. So in any event, I just had one little question. So with the yellow placard, if I understand correctly, if you're receive the yellow marking, you have to fix things within three business days. So does that placard? So are you in that yellow status only for a very brief period of time?
Yes, and before we leave the facility, the major violations need to be fixed.
Right,
If not permanently, then temporarily. And we'll be back within 3 business days to revisit, make sure that permanent fixes have been made, or that everything else is in order. And then we believe that they'll get a green at that point, or we're optimistic that they'll get a green.
And should they not, meet the standard, do they stay in yellow for a while, or do they go right to red?
Well, if they're unable to repair or fix the major violations while we're there, we will have to close them temporarily until they can fix it. If they have chronic issues where they aren't able to get back into the green, then we'll send them down a different track and work with them through training and office hearings, whatever it takes to get them back up into the green.
Thank you.
Sure.
one question. Will this apply to food trucks?
Yes, it will. All businesses that prepare food.
Okay.
Do you want to make a motion, Supervisor Tissier?
I sure do. I'd like to make the motion to, first, if I can see it, introduce the amendment and also item A, and then item B, initiate the food placarding system.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you all very much for your hard work.
And I just want to say one last thing. First off, when we first started this, we talked about maybe introducing this in 2016. And I kept insisting that I know we can do this faster. So I want to thank you because I mean, look at that team. We did this in 6 months.
Right.
And it was incredible. And Greg Burge from my office worked with them. And they're still speaking to my office, so I think that's a good thing. But thank you all for working so hard. I know it was a big lift, and there's still a lot more to do. So I thank you, and I look forward to seeing them in the windows in January.
Okay.
Thank you.
Excellent. Go to item number 8 now from the county manager. And after you finish your comments, we have a public speaker.
Madam President, members of the board, as you know, Lieutenant Deb Bazan retired recently. She was the project manager of the Maple Street Correction Center project. Over the years, she certainly developed a considerable expertise on major capital projects. Given that expertise, we would like to retain her as an advisor consultant, if you will, to help strategize some of the major projects that we have in the pipeline that the board is aware of, as well as to troubleshoot some of those projects as the need may be. And so in keeping with the requirements of the Pepper Act, since her work would begin within 180 days of her retirement, we're asking the board to designate this based on the nature of employment as a necessary position that is critically needed so that she can begin work immediately.
All right. Questions for Mr. Maltby?
No, I really know Lieutenant Bazan so well. She is really an exceptional project manager, so I would move to approve the resolution.
Before we do that, I have a public comment card.
Okay.
Mr. Fox, please.
Okay.
Thank you again, members of the board. Lieutenant Bazan is far more than a jail construction project manager. She is a person who has allayed the fears of at least one family member that I know of about having their loved one serve time in jail. She has an empathy for the mentally ill that is so persuasive that it will relieve the fears of an individual I frankly had difficulty convincing to contact her in the first place. It was amazing. Please approve this. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Fox. She is truly an extraordinary person.
Is.
So now, Mr. Supervisor Horsley, you want to make the motion?
Thank you very much. I would make a motion to approve the resolution approving the hiring of retired Sheriff's Lieutenant Deborah Bazan.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, and now the long-awaited moment, I'm sure, for the board, my semi-monthly report. Several items on the report that I'm pleased to make note of. The first is that the county has been designated within the top 5 of health rankings that is made annually by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. The published rankings look at nearly every aspect of what it takes to make a healthy community, including high school graduation rates, access to healthful food, and rates of smoking, obesity, and teen births. San Mateo County ranked 4th in the health outcomes based on the length and quality of life, and 3rd for the health factors like behavior, clinical care, and the physical environment. And my congratulations to all in our health system. for that accomplishment, as well as to the general community, and again reinforces what a great place San Mateo County is to both live and work. Also to make note that there are several significant changes coming to the health campus in San Mateo. The health system and the Department of Public Works held 2 community meetings on April 7th to explain these 3 projects, and I want to thank Supervisor Carol Groom for facilitating those meetings with the community. The projects include the installation of solar panels over the existing parking lot to help reduce the medical center's demand on electricity and save approximately $300,000 a year. The project will start on June 1st and take approximately 4 months to complete. Secondly, a new seismically safe water tank will replace the 1938 structure and meet current federal and state laws requiring the storage of at least 72 hours worth of water. The project should be completed, begin in early 2016 and be completed by early spring of that year. Finally, as the board is aware, the former receiving home, which is a separate structure on that campus that at one time housed abused children at the corner of Hacienda and 37th Avenue, is intended to be renovated into a Serenity House, a respite center for people with mental illness who need a short-term place to stabilize. The center will be staffed around the clock and serve no more than 10 individuals at any given time. The renovation includes landscaping improvements, fencing, and the potential addition of 12 to 13 parking spots on the campus, which, as you know, is always stressed in terms of parking. In terms of community services, I'm pleased to report that the Office of Sustainability has been working on a new app that is being rolled out in what's known as a soft rollout. The title is Keeping It Clean Community, and it is intended to make it easy to report illegal dumping in the North Fair Oaks area. Obviously, this has ramifications beyond the illegal dumping that occurs throughout the county, but also in other code enforcement aspects of the work that is done by building and planning. The users type in an address or use a map marker to indicate where the dumping has been observed, select a service request, and they can also attach a photograph to the app. The report then goes directly to the appropriate county departments to be quickly addressed. Also, in terms of North Fair Oaks, I'm pleased to report that working with the North Fair Oaks Community Council, a business sustainability plan to approve the redesign in the concept of the redesign concept for Middlefield Road is well underway. The development of that plan, the North Fair Oaks Forward team has now interviewed 87 businesses located on Middlefield Road and also has conducted a survey of the property owners. The North Fair Oaks Forward team will present the survey data to local businesses and work with them on developing a plan to remain stable during the construction work which will take place on Middlefield Road and to gauge future business needs. In terms of upcoming events, again, to remind the board and the public that the Employee Emergency Response Awareness Day is coming on Wednesday, June 3rd, outside the county center to make sure that all employees are aware of their designation as disaster service workers when an event occurs, and that may result in every county employee being required to take on additional duties other than those that they normally perform during that disaster. Also, the resources of San Mateo County Alert to begin preparing for the Great Shakeout Earthquake Drill coming in October. With that, Madam President, members of the board, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
Questions for Mr. Maltby? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Board reports. Supervisor Pine, do you want to begin?
Sure, thank you. A couple quick things. First, I just wanted to express how excited I am about the respite center coming online in San Mateo, and thank Supervisor Groom for working with the community on that. I mean, that's I think it's something we can be very proud of, that we're looking for alternatives for people who are really facing incredible distress and need a place to stabilize. And this is a significant accomplishment. I'm very, very happy to hear that it's after a lot of searching we found a place. One announcement. On the 20th, on next Monday, the Bay Area Council is going to release a major report on what would happen to the Bay Area in the event of a 150-year storm event. So I'll be sure you all get a copy of that. I'm going to participate on a panel in connection with the release of the report. At the high level is it predicts over $10 billion of damage, with that damage concentrated in Santa Clara, Alameda, and, of course, San Mateo. So I think it'll be an important report to heighten awareness of storm and flood risk. And this is completely independent of sea level rise. It's just, a major storm that could happen. And then finally, I spent some time a week or so back shadowing one of our HUT team workers in South San Francisco, which was really a great experience. Learned a lot about how a HUT team person really works on the ground. And the young man was, he was busy the whole time, because every time we saw someone, he had something to say, he had somebody to call. And we had some long conversations with some of these folks who don't want to go to the shelter. And but of course, the magic of the HUT team is they try to find that trigger that will make them look at things differently. So I continue to be a very big advocate of that program, because it certainly has very, very real impact. Thank you.
Supervisor Slocum?
Thank you. As you all know, North Fair Oaks has a lot of SFPUC lands that run through neighborhoods there. And last week, County Manager Maltby was good enough to organize a tour of Milpitas, because Milpitas has an incredible system of lands that were SFPUC lands that were converted into parks. And we saw just incredible sites, incredible parks, community gardens. It was really amazing. And to see the people walking and biking on that path was really very interesting in terms of creating what the possibilities might be for North Fair Oaks and some of that SFPUC land down there that runs through neighborhoods. So I want to thank Mr. Maltby for doing that. And with us were Peggy Jensen, Mike Callahy, Marlene Finley, and Maya Perkins. Speaking of SFPUC lands, just in a month, we're going to celebrate the 1-year anniversary of Friendship Park, which was rebuilt on SFPUC lands. And whenever I'm in North Fair Oaks, I actually drive by there just to make sure the kids are still playing there and the tomatoes are still growing in the beds. And what a transformation that has been. Poetry is, we're having, as I mentioned a meeting ago, Tuesday, May 12th at the Fair Oaks Library. We're going to have a poetry reading with our poet laureate and contest winners from Poetry is Heritage. And finally, let me request that we adjourn of Tuskegee Airman Les Williams. Les was a 95-year-old former member of the Tuskegee Airmen. an elite group of African American fighter pilots who trained during the time that Jim Crow laws were in effect, and basically they broke the military color barrier during World War II. He was a native of San Francisco but grew up in San Mateo, was drafted into the Army in 1939. He earned his wings in 1943, and he graduated with the first African American bomber pilot group. He never actually got to serve. The war ended the day that he was supposed to ship out with his unit, but after leaving the Army, he came back and interestingly ran a dance studio here. And at the age of 60, he attended and graduated from Stanford Law School and practiced law for some 20 years after that. Pretty amazing. And in 2007, the Tuskegee Airmen, of course, received the Congressional Gold Medal from President George W. Bush. And I'd like to also adjourn in memory of 4 Vietnam veterans from San Mateo County. Last week, the miniature traveling wall that heals made a visit to the Golden Gate Cemetery, and there was a program organized. Supervisor Pine and I attended. I thought for myself it was very moving to see the wall and talk to some of the people. And I just wanted to take a moment to read to you the 4 names of the soldiers from unincorporated San Mateo, actually. And it's sort of interesting that they're all from the coast side, and there are 4 of them. So from El Granada, Marine Corps Lance Corporal Joseph Burt Lucido, who was with the 3rd Marine Division. From La Honda, Army Specialist 4, Steve Joseph Leon Perry, who served with the 23rd Infantry Division. Montera, Army Specialist 4, Robert Lloyd Dietrich, who was with the 11th Armored Cavalry Division. And from Moss Beach, Army Specialist 4, Billy Ray Owens, who served with the 1st Infantry Division. Thank you all for your service. There were some 111 soldiers from San Mateo County that lost their lives in Vietnam.
Supervisor Horsley?
Yeah, it's just a sort of a sad case. Greg Trindle was the assistant sheriff while I was sheriff, and retired shortly after I did. He and I actually were hired together in 1972. He served as a sergeant, lieutenant, captain, and then finally assistant sheriff. He and I had a lot of connections, and our kids went to the same preschool, and my nephew started and plays with his daughter. He also lived close by. He lived on Orchard in Redwood City, and it's really only about a block or 2 away from Chuck's Donuts, and we kind of joked about the fact that good thing you bought that house close to Chuck Donuts. And of course, he always had a great sense of humor, but it was the advantage to him is that because he was spent most of his career in patrol, and he would go to Chuck's Donuts to write his police reports, and his 2 daughters would always come and visit him. So it was a great opportunity for the kids to spend a lot of time with him. I was fortunate myself, and I know a couple weeks ago did get the chance to visit with him, and I'd hoped to see him once again. And I know Greg Monks and Bill Pedrini, who also served with him, got to visit him, and a number of other people did too. So when he knew he had a very short time to live, he let all the people in the sheriff's department know. And you know, it really is a great esprit de corps in law enforcement. So he wanted all of his friends and people in the sheriff's department to be able to say goodbye to him. So he passed away just the other day.
I actually have quite a few today. I don't know if something was in the water in the North County, but first off, I'd like to adjourn in memory of Betty Diggins. She passed away yesterday at the age of 57. She was the wife of retired Sheriff's Department Sergeant John Diggins, the mother of Suzanne, Leanne, and AJ. She was a grandmother of 2. She went to Our Lady of Mercy Grammar School and Mercy High School, and she enjoyed camping in the great outdoors and a lot of time spent with her children and grandchildren. She will be sorely missed. I'd also like to adjourn in memory of Agnes Dolores Viola Fuller. She was one of 8 brothers and sisters. She was born in San Francisco. She went to Mission High. Her favorite things were bingo, bowling, oldies music, and soap operas. She was an avid fan of the 49ers, the Giants, and loved NASCAR. And she was a devout Catholic. She's the mother of Christine Fuller of the North County. I'd also like to adjourn in memory of Betty Lou Encardi. She was born in Butte, Montana, but moved to the Bay Area in the 40s. She was a hairdresser. She married the love of her life, Harris Encardi, in 1960. She had her 2 children, Brenda and Mark. She was a loving mother, always putting her children first. She enjoyed doing crafts, baking, music, and various other classes in her spare time. The other individual I wanted to adjourn in memory of was Lon Simmons, being the baseball buff that I am. And also, what was interesting is as I read his obituary, I realized that he died at his Daly City home, and I did not know he was a Daly City resident. So that was something new.
Would have been on his doorstep.
Absolutely. Obviously, he was a Major League Baseball broadcaster, and if you remember, the earthquake interrupted the World Series, and he also was the 49ers Super Bowl 23 announcer. He was honored by Baseball's Hall of Fame in 2004, and he'll be sorely missed. He spent many years, last 3 in particular, battling cancer. I'd also like to adjourn in memory of Cynthia Kelly. She was the sister of Governor Jerry Brown. Interestingly enough, she at one time was a school teacher in Daly City, and her daughter actually teaches in Daly City now. She was the second oldest daughter of the late Governor Edmund G. Pat Brown. She was the ultimate mother, housewife, and was consumed with raising her family. She had a penchant for art and culture, and apparently she was quite the athlete on the tennis courts and as well as swimming. Governor Brown said she had an infectious smile that would light up any room. She loved to be with friends and family and was with them to the very end. So our sympathies go out to all of these families in the Bay Area. Thank you.
I'd like to adjourn in memory of Randy Silver. Many, many women in San Mateo County will remember him as the photographer at the Women's Hall of Fame. He was quite an accomplished photographer, had 3 books published. But one of the interesting things about him also is that he had a law degree and a master's degree, and he was a marriage and family counselor. I don't know how much he practiced law, but he certainly was a great photographer. He taught photography, donated his time to work with lots of organizations, including Second Harvest Food Bank, the Unitarian Universalist of San Mateo. And as I said, he has 3 books out. One is the French landscape, one is Venice and Croatia, and one is on Civil War. Multi-talented man, died way too young. And so I'd like to adjourn in his memory. With that, we're going to go to closed session and report back.
That was good.
Welcome to part 2 of Tuesday, April 14th Board of Supervisors meeting for this special study session. Mr. Byers, before we begin, would you report out a closed session?
Yes, thank you, President Groom. The board met in closed session to consider 2 items. There was no final reportable action taken.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to turn it over to Supervisor Tissier to begin our study session.
Great. Thank you, Madam President. We're here this afternoon to talk about a possible introduction of a safe medicine disposal ordinance. And we have here with us today our Director of Health Services, Jean Frazier, who's going to say a few words first, and then I'm going to follow up by a few comments.
Thank you, Supervisor. Again, Jean Fraser, Chief of the Health System. I just wanted to express the gratitude of the entire health system, and in particular our Environmental Health Division, for the support of the county manager and your board for addressing this important issue. It's a rare privilege to work in a county where the leadership is so focused on threats to human health as well as environmental health. And I'm very proud to be here today with my colleagues from Environmental Health to present this ordinance to you for your consideration. I also wanted to thank Heather Forshee, our Director of Environmental Health, as well as Waymond Wong from our staff for all of the work that they have done on this, and the support of County Council, who have helped us through all of these issues. And my final thanks go to Supervisor Groom for sponsoring this, and in particular to Supervisor Tissier. You've been an extraordinary leader on this issue for many years. We're very proud that we've been able to work with you in the past, and we're extraordinarily grateful that you are raising this issue to a new height. So on behalf of the entire health system leadership, who yesterday said how proud we all were in our meeting that we worked for you, we're so very, very pleased you're here to consider this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Let me just start off with just a little bit of history. I mean, back in 2004, I was elected to the board, and my father had just passed away, and I had a medicine cabinet filled with pharmaceuticals, and I didn't really know what to do with it. And from that point till I actually sat on the board in 2005, I did a lot of orientation in the health department, and I asked someone there, what do I do with all these pharmaceuticals? And they kind of hemmed and hawed, and they didn't really have an answer. And I didn't press it because I knew after doing some research that really it was a very difficult situation. And with controlled substances, we weren't going to be able to take things back just willy-nilly. So when I got on the board, I had done research in that field, and I also had read several articles about teenagers having what they call farm parties, PHARM, and also about children and seniors inadvertently getting into medications in the cabinet. And so what happened when those incidents happened, and it led to a lot of deaths, and it led to a lot of overdoses. And then there was also the impact on our environment, whether it's our water or our garbage landfill areas, the impact it could have on the environment if we end up throwing them in the garbage, as well as if we throw them down the toilet. I've read that the prescription drugs are the second most abused category of drugs following marijuana for children aged 12 to 17. So I really wanted to find out how we could legally collect these pharmaceuticals. And the interesting thing about it is the only way we could do it back then was through a drug enforcement agency. So I talked to our sheriff and I met with our police chiefs, and they all agreed that they'd let me go ahead and do a pilot program, and they'd be happy to do it in their cities. So we started off a little bit slow, but to this day we now have 14 bins, 2 in the sheriff's department and 12 in local police departments. I can say that, thanks to law enforcement, they stepped up and we could really see what exactly this did for us. Roughly every year we collect roughly 12 tons of pharmaceuticals. And over time, I think we've collected around 71 tons of pharmaceuticals. So we've been successful, and I've been very happy about that. But the reality is, we can do better. And we can do much more, and we can do it throughout the entire county, through every district, and have far more disposal areas to drop pharmaceuticals off. So I guess the question you could say is, why an ordinance and why now? Well, for those of you that may not have followed this, in September of last year, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that a program by Alameda County is legal, allowing for the pharmaceutical industry to design, manage, and fund the county's safe medicine disposal program. And in that same month, the Drug Enforcement Agency handed down their final rule on pharmaceutical and controlled substance disposal, allowing retail pharmacies, long-term care facilities, and narcotic treatment facilities to collect drugs, not just police and law enforcement agencies. However, unfortunately, at the same time, their new rules eliminated the twice-a-year local disposal event they hosted after the passage of the U.S. Secure and Responsible Drug Disposal Act of 2010. So now it's actually back on the shoulders of local and state government. So therefore, I believe any effort to streamline and accelerate safe medicine disposal in San Mateo County is in alignment with the recent court and DEA rulings, falling upon our board to act now. The model that we're looking at, and you'll have a much more in-depth presentation, is called the extended producer responsibility. It's been successful in California for other means such as paint, thermostats, and mattresses. It'll require the drug manufacturers to design, implement a plan for the collection, transport, and disposal of leftover, expired, or unneeded medications. So I'm calling upon our manufacturers in our area to be good corporate citizens and to be good environmental stewards. And so with that, I would like to introduce Heather Forshee and Wayman Wong. They are the ones that have done the heavy lifting, and then the more technical heavy lifting is taken by our legal counsel with Tim Shimizu and Manoli Sheath. So I thank you as well, because I know this was no easy task, but I am thrilled that we're at this point today, and my hope is to get enough input from the public and others that we can actually introduce this ordinance today. So with that, I'll turn it over to Heather.
Thank you. President Groom, members of the board, Mr. Maltby, Mr. Byers, Heather Forshee, Environmental Health. We all agree that medications help us live longer and healthier lives. In fact, 7 in 10 Americans have and are taking at least one prescription medication right now. However, medications are not completely consumed when they're purchased. As a result, most households have leftover meds sitting around just waiting to be properly disposed of. National studies estimate that up to 33% of medicines go unused. With this abundance of leftover unused medicine, all of our medicine cabinets have some in them. We've got them in our drawers. We've got them in our closets. 1 in 5 teens has taken prescription drugs not prescribed to them. In 2009, deaths from overdoses surpassed car accidents as the leading cause of injury death in the U.S. Locally, we're seeing some of the same problems. According to our own San Mateo Public Health County data, over a 20-year span, 53% of unintentional deaths were due to misuse or abuse of legal medications, and 17% of suicides were due to medication poisoning. Local officials have reported to Environmental Health that students are selling prescription drugs to each other on high school campuses. Overall, recreational use of prescription meds is rising here in San Mateo County. We're also seeing evidence of an environmental problem. For many years, the public has been told to simply flush their unused meds or discard them in the trash. Studies by the U.S. Geological Survey showed that trace amounts of these medications are found in our waterways all over the United States and are even found in some fish tissue. Trace amounts of medicine is also found here in San Francisco Bay, in the water, in the sediments, and even in mussels. Disposal of medicines into the trash sends them to landfills, and there's always a chance that groundwater can be impacted through this route as well. The exact source of the current environmental contamination is unknown right now, but disposal of medicines this way is not a good idea from an environmental health perspective. So what are residents doing with their unused meds? Environmental Health recently conducted an online survey, and within 2 short weeks, we had over 1,800 responses from our community. 38% of our residents continue to flush them or throw them in the garbage. 27% still set them aside at home, waiting for a more convenient way of disposing of them. Consistently, throughout the survey, residents stated that they want more convenience to discard their unused wet medicine. Unused stored medicines are getting into the hands of children and adults who are accidentally or intentionally using them in ways they shouldn't be. And the survey comments from our own residents showed that they really do want to do the right thing by discarding these medicines safely. I wanted to briefly read a few survey quotes from our community. The drugstore drop-off is the best idea. Return the things to where they're sold seems like the most obvious thing. I feel that any place that sells you medicine should have a take-back bin free for all who walk in. And it has to be easy and convenient or most folks won't participate.
Wayman Wong, Environmental Health. Now, as Supervisor Tissier mentioned, in 2006, she took the lead and worked with the county sheriff and many police agencies to start up a collection program in this county. And that was the first in the nation that started in 2006. Now, having these collections at law enforcement agencies was key because residents could dispose of their waste medications, their over-the-counter prescription drugs, including controlled substances, your Vicodins, your other types of painkillers. And we started off with 4 and quickly grew to 14 when the demand and the popularity of the program grew. We see that from at the first full year of the program in 2007, we collected over 5,000 pounds of waste medication. By 2014, in that calendar year, we collected over 23,000 pounds. Now, over that 8-year span, 143,000 pounds were collected. And that's 71 tons of waste medication that did not end up in our waterways, that did not end up in the landfill, or did not end up in the wrong hands. So we knew that the popularity of this program was increasing with those numbers. Now, as Supervisor Tissier mentioned, changes needed to be made. The federal government recognized that this was an issue. The National Drug Control Strategy of the White House identified one of their 4 main pillars to controlling this problem is to establish more disposal options or take-back programs locally. And with DEA changes, that has now changed where these one-day collection events are no longer available. Fortunately, we have an ongoing collections at our law enforcement agencies. Now, prior to these rule changes, the restrictions on where controlled substances could go were mainly focused towards law enforcement agencies. And that's why it was so critical that our program began at those locations. But with this change in DEA rules, it allows for a greater expansion of this program to allow other entities, your retail pharmacies, your Walgreens, your CVS's, hospitals and clinic pharmacies, whether it's local or private, or continue at the law enforcement agencies, they can continue to accept now over-the-counter medication, prescription drugs, as well as controlled substances. Now, how are we going to address this problem? One of the keys that we're looking at is for medicine producers to design and fund a program here in this county. They would use their expertise, their skill, their infrastructure, their resources to develop that program here. That type of program, that concept is often known as extended producer responsibility or product stewardship. Now, this type of, this model of collection is not unknown. It's been around for many years, and it's well known in this state as well. In California, we have the opportunity to utilize this model to collect paint, mercury thermostats, mattresses, and a few other types of products. And when we look at paint in particular, that's only been in existence here in the state for a few years. And in that time, the county has seen an increase of collection sites from 5 to 23 sites currently. So we know that these types of models work. They work for different types of products, and they work all over the world. And as we see, if we look specifically at medicine collection, it works in other parts of the world as well. In Spain, France, and Portugal, they have a collection program. Down south in Colombia and Brazil. In North America, the entire country of Mexico and most provinces in Canada have this program in place. So the medicine producers are being socially responsible in other parts of the world. What we're merely asking for them to do is to do that as well in this county. Now, without a comprehensive program nationwide, what we need to look at is on a more local level. Statewide, we've attempted to work with state legislators on a state bill. Senate Bill 1014 failed in the last legislative session. That would have established an EPR medicine collection program in the state. That was unfortunately due to heavy lobbying by the industry against us. Meanwhile, Alameda County in 2012 passed a local ordinance to do this program in that county. They've been successful in defending their ordinance in front of 2 courts, the latest being in front of the U.S. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. In San Francisco, they actually started this process in 2010. They proposed an ordinance at that time, but decided to put it on hold while they conducted a pilot program. That pilot program was partially funded by the industry, and they collected waste medication at pharmacies and law enforcement agencies. And during that pilot program, they found that less than 10% of the waste medication that was collected went to law enforcement agencies. The majority of it went to their local pharmacies. That is very similar to some of our survey results that we had for our county residents. When we surveyed the county residents a few months ago, they noted to us that 95% stated that they would take their waste medications to pharmacies if given the opportunity. In any event, since at the conclusion of San Francisco's pilot study, they decided to move forward with an ordinance as well. And in March of in this year, they passed an ordinance. At this point, there are a few others considering an ordinance as well, Marin being one that will be introducing an ordinance in the coming months. Now, how is this program going to work? Conceptually, how this would work is producers would take responsibility for their unwanted products. They would submit a stewardship plan or a plan to identify how they will comply with the ordinance, how they will collect and dispose of waste medications from the county. They can operate individually or as part of a group of producers. They would submit that plan to the county, and based on our approval, they can start to operate collection programs here in this county. Now, we know that based on our experience, that when we increase the amount of collection, increase the convenience, more people will participate, and we're going to collect more waste medication. Based on our survey, based on our experience over the years, we know that there's a demand for this service. We know that with what the industry has done in other parts of the world, that they play a key role in making sure that this program will be more effective, more convenient for the public, whether it's mail-back programs, collections at pharmacies, hospitals, or law enforcement agencies. It'll be key to incorporate them into the program. We believe that it's only fair that the industry be part of the solution. They become socially responsible for the unwanted products that are left behind in our community. So with that, what we have before you is a proposed safe medicine disposal ordinance. What it details is specific responsibilities of the producers, and obviously others have a role in it as well. The community has a role to participate in a program to make it successful, and the county has a role as well. Our main task will be to provide oversight, providing technical assistance to all the producers or group of producers to let them know how they will comply with the ordinance and how they can tailor these programs specifically to San Mateo County. We'll also review the plans that they will be submitting to make sure that it is complete and complies with all state and federal regulations. And of course, if there are any problems, enforcement is the last tool that's also included in the ordinance. The producers have responsibilities in this as well. They will be submitting a plan to the county that will detail how they will collect, how they will dispose of the material, how they will promote the program to the public, and goals that they'll have, whether it's short-term or long-term goals. So we'll see how effective their programs will be. They will be expected to finance the program, whether it's the collections, the disposal, the initial cost for infrastructure, how they'll do their outreach, and all the administrative costs for the county's plan review process. And lastly, we'll have an opportunity to see how they're progressing, evaluating their success through annual reports. Every annual report will let us know whether they're meeting their goals, how much they're collecting, how much outreach they're doing. Now, if the board so chooses to move forward with this ordinance, 6 months from the effective date, what we'd expect is that the producers would notify us of their intent, whether they're going to comply with the ordinance individually or as part of a stewardship organization. Within a year, we would expect a plan in the county's hands for our review and approval. And by 18 months after the effective date, we are expecting a fully designed and funded medicine collection program. So at this point, what we're looking for is direction from the board on next steps, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I don't have any questions at the moment because I've been heavily involved in this, but there may be others. I'll let you take it, Carol.
Supervisor Pine?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. It was very helpful. I mean, this is a very exciting proposal. I mean, this notion of, what's the buzzword, extended producer responsibility, as you say, is one that has been applied in a lot of other products and needs to be applied in a host of products, I think, including these. So I guess my questions are just a little more, kind of get into some of the details of how this would work. Is Alameda and San Francisco actually up and running, or do they have that program going now, or?
Wayman Wong, Environmental Health. Alameda County, when they passed their ordinance, they gave a certain timeline, very similar to ours. Plans have been submitted to Alameda County, but at this point, there has not been a collection event in Alameda County yet. San Francisco just passed theirs, so plans have not been submitted to them yet.
So what did those, have you had a chance to look at the plan that was submitted to Alameda? I'm kind of curious to understand what that plan would look like and how extensive it is, how much cost it is. I mean, I know, again, we're pushing these responsibilities onto the manufacturer, but I don't have a sense for the size of the undertaking.
So Alameda County received 2 plans. One was by an individual producer that submitted a plan specific to the drugs that's sold in Alameda County based on what they're expected to collect. The other one was a group of 200 plus producers, and the plan that they submitted just outlined what their short-term and long-term goals are, essentially continuing with law enforcement collections for the time being as they continue to expand in the near future with pharmacies and hospital pharmacies.
So in putting this plan together, so again, you mentioned the county has to, sign off on it. But does a manufacturing group have any recourse, or if they think the plan will do the job, meet the goals and objectives, but the county thinks it's inadequate in some way, what happens then?
We'll continue to work with these producers on developing an effective plan. Now, we know that they've have plans that have worked in other parts of the country, other parts of the world. They've already submitted a plan in Alameda County. So in our process, we'll make sure that we basically work with them up front to address any issues that might come up with plan development.
And getting back to my earlier question, maybe someone from industry will speak to this, but again, just to get a sense for the size and scope of it, how much would cost industry to implement this in a county of our size? I know that would just be a big approximation, but is this many millions of dollars, or I don't have a good sense for the scope and scale of it.
So in my estimation, it would cost the industry roughly $250,000 to implement this program. And I would say that's probably on the high end because the industry already has infrastructure and these business relationships in place. So they'll be able to implement this program more cost effectively, more efficiently than the county would be able to. And since they'd also be able to establish economies of scale with Alameda County and San Francisco working on this, having a Bay Area-wide ability to manage this program they'll realize some cost savings with that.
Yeah, I think that's really creative. The fact that you're putting the challenge to industry to figure out how to do it efficiently, do it effectively, and so that's a nice approach.
Just a follow-up, Dave. One of the things, and I don't know if you saw it in the materials here, but it costs us about $35,000 a year to collect it. Now, that doesn't include the law enforcement time, but it really isn't a huge, that's 14 bins. We're asking for at least 5 bins per district. so that's 25 bins. So part of it, as you say, is the economies of scale, and it shouldn't be outrageous. And we're not trying to ding the industry, but the taxpayers are paying for it now. And I think now is, if, we want to keep it reasonable, but we want it to be as smooth and transparent as possible. And at the same time, making sure we make a bigger dent in the disposal. So I think Wayman's right. I don't think it's going to be a huge cost, but there will be a cost.
So I'm a bit of a hoarder of antibiotics. Do I have to turn those in?
Yes,
I'm
you
taking
do.
notes, Dave. I'm taking notes.
We're gonna inspect. I remember when we worked on this, we had the undersheriff, Greg Monks, who now is the sheriff, work with you on this, and I remember you were pretty clever in getting Carol Conroy, who was the postmaster, to all those old mailboxes and painting them white and having them in police departments. Just one question about if the police departments are still collecting this used medication, will their costs be covered under this ordinance as well? It doesn't sound like they're huge costs now, the $35,000 now. I assume it would go down, but would they somehow have to observe whatever those costs are in the future?
Well, as Supervisor Tissier mentioned, a lot of what is unaccounted for right now is the time that is spent by law enforcement agencies to manage the program. With this new program funded by the industry and designed by the industry, that would limit the amount of time law enforcement agencies would actually have to manage this. Essentially, a third-party contractor would be coming into the site to collect the medications, and law enforcement would not have to actively manage the program any longer.
And the third party would take care, they would take care of the cost of both the third party and the disposal?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you for the presentation. Some of the numbers were staggering. 71 tons collected, 71 tons collected. I'm curious, and Supervisor Tissier just mentioned this, but I think she said, if I heard her right, that the goal was 5 sites per district?
Correct.
That was the goal. I'm curious about North Fair Oaks specifically, where I think there's only one pharmacy for that area of 18 to 20,000 people. How would that work in that geographic area, or would there only be the one site at the pharmacy? Have you given that thought?
So there's multiple options that it's available to the producers. What we wanted to establish was a minimum standard. What we expect to see is a lot more pharmacies and locations for various areas. So aside from the pharmacy down in North Fair Oaks, if there are other clinic pharmacies that would be made available, that would be an option, as well as mail back. That's also an option for a collection. As we were looking in British Columbia, in Canada, when they established their program in '96, they opened up their program, and over 97% of the pharmacies voluntarily decided to participate in the program. So that gave them over 1,000 sites to collect medicines in that province. So we fully expect that there'd be a lot more participation here as well.
Anything else? We'll go to the public if you're ready for that. I'd like to call Robert Fourcrolt, please.
Good afternoon, President Groom, members of the board, Mr. Malpe, Mr. Byers. My name is Robert Fourcrolt. I am the coroner of San Mateo County, and I'm here today to share some information on the tragic results of our investigations that lead into overdoses or accidental deaths involving medications. In 2013, we had 61 deaths, 50 involving medications. 53 of those were mannered as accidents. 8 of those were mannered as suicides. In 2014, there were 63 deaths regarding prescription medication. 53 of those, again, were accidents, and 10 were suicides. When we conduct our investigations, we secure medications that may be involved in the death, and we dispose of those medications. Oftentimes we get family members that clean estates where my office does not get involved, and they look to us to dispose of those medications. In over a 2-year period, even though it's a small amount, but those medications came off the street, we collected about 250 pounds of prescribed medications. Just as recent as yesterday, we had the tragic death of a 20-year-old male in the north part of the county, and he had been obtaining for quite some time prescription medications that were not prescribed to him from an outside source. So I'm here today to support the ordinance, not only for the safety of the environment, but also the safety of our residents of San Mateo County. Thank you.
Thank you. Lieutenant John Muncy.
President Groom, members of the board, Mr. Malpe, Mr. Byers. Good afternoon. My name is Lieutenant John Muncy. I'm with the Sheriff's Office. I've been with the Sheriff's Office for 20 years now, and I currently serve as Chief of Police Services for the City of Half Moon Bay and Coastside Patrol. I've also been a supervisor and commander for the San Mateo County Narcotics Task Force, and I've seen the horrible effects of the use and abuse of prescription drugs, from addiction to overdose to suicide to the plethora of violence and criminal activity committed while under the influence. The Sheriff's Office currently operates 2 medication collection sites on the coast. One is located at our substation in Moss Beach, the other is located at our substation in Half Moon Bay. We continue to take a proactive approach to the medication collection by reminding the public of the need for proper disposal and the locations for collection. We do this through newsletters and various community events. We currently utilize, or are fortunate enough to utilize, a Sheriff's Office volunteer to collect medication each week and transport it to Redwood City. On an almost continual basis, the collection containers, which has been mentioned, are the size of a United States Post Office box, are completely full to the point where they're overflowing. And although we're very proud of the proactive approach to collection and the amount of medication collected, it is my opinion that we are only collecting a fraction of the unused medication, and there more can be done. I believe it to be undeniable that the reduction of unused medication reduces the ability for our young people to abuse, our elderly people to accidentally take, and to lessen the pollution in our water. It is for this reason that I would fully support further medication collection programs and eagerly look forward to working collectively with pharmacies and pharmaceutical companies to expand collection and methods in San Mateo County. Thank you.
Thank you. Sergeant Rick Decker.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. My name is Rick Decker. I'm a Sergeant in San Mateo Police Department. I'm here representing my department as well as Chief Susan Manheimer. Some of what you'll hear from me probably echoes the same thing you just heard from Chief Muncy. But as you know, we are one of the participating agencies. We have our mailbox. We inadvertently created a 24/7 drop-off. In 2008, when we started our program, we chose to put the box outside for health and safety reasons. And inadvertently, we allowed public access on a 24/7 basis. I can tell you, as of yesterday, on average, we get no less than 300 pounds a week. There are weeks when we are closer to 400, or even what you know is the DEA limit of 500. We've created an overflow bin now inside the agency. And then beyond that, outside in a separate private area, we have an overflow for how much we create. I would add to that up until they were disbanded, we had those 2 events each year where we participated with the DEA to have 2-hour collection windows where no questions asked, the public could drop off their medication. And again, in those 2 hours, we were again collecting between 300 and 400 pounds of medication just in that short time window. So I'm echoing some of the same comments. I can't stress enough, we would absolutely 100% support expansion of the program. We do believe the demand is there, and it remains a public health concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy McGee.
Hi, my name is Nancy McGee. I'm here on behalf of the San Mateo County Office of Education representing Ann Campbell, as well as the Coalition for Safe Schools and Communities, which I've been a leader in the county working to establish additional measures of safety for our kids in the county. I was also in my earlier career a 20-year high school teacher and working with youth every single day over many, many years. And during that time, I worked with kids who were struggling with addiction and abuse, and I did see the dangers of easy access to prescription medication. One thing about prescription medication is that it's invisible. It doesn't leave. There's no, paraphernalia that gets left behind. It's easy to slip into a pocket and into a mouth, and it's very easy for kids to sneak under the radar when they're suffering with that kind of issue. Additionally, I would say that in the expansion of the safe the expansion of the safe medicine disposal ordinance, we put these devices out more into the public eye, into pharmacies where families come and go every day. And one thing that kids learn is what their parents do. And when they see their parents taking responsible action to dispose of medicines, they learn that as a child, that that's certainly a habit to take in their lifetime. And they might ask questions also, why are you doing that? And there's lots of good reasons. Safe water, and how medicines disposed of improperly pollute the waters, and just responsible medical interaction. And so what our kids learn by establishing this infrastructure is much bigger than what we realize. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Beer.
Good afternoon, President Groom and the board, members of the board. Sorry, I got nervous all of a sudden.
Oh, no, don't be nervous.
I am with the North County Prevention Partnership. We have a community-based partnership grant through the County of San Mateo. I am representing Pacifica today. We do work in Daly City and Pacifica both, prevention work. We have really big concerns about our prescription drug use in Pacifica and in Daly City and in South City for that matter. There's been a really big increase in the amount of students that are caught on campus taking Xanax, which is a very scary thing. We have done some surveys. So our California Healthy Kids survey showed that 12% of our 7th graders are taking medication that is not prescribed to them. We have a youth council who did a survey in Jefferson Union High School District last year, which showed 39% of students know someone who is abusing prescription medication. So safe disposal is a big issue for us in Pacifica. There's one drop-off box at the Pacifica Police Department. With the outsourcing of our Pacifica Police Department's office staff and dispatchers, there's not enough hours of the day. They're not open enough to provide access to the drop box and there's one box for 38,000 people. So we highly encourage this ordinance. We thank you so much for the work that you're doing, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. Otilia Lambino.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. My name is Attila Lambino. I am with the North County Prevention Partnership. I'm also a resident of South San Francisco. North County Prevention Partnership, as Mary Beer mentioned, is a substance abuse prevention coalition, and our focus is on alcohol prevention and also prescription drug prevention. So as Mary mentioned, Xanax is a big problem in South San Francisco, and unlike our Daly City and Pacifica coalition, our coalition in South San Francisco is relatively new. We have not established as much infrastructure there as we have in Daly City and Pacifica. And so we can say safely that the data for prescription drug use is a couple of years behind what's happening on the streets right now. Based on conversations and meetings I've had with coalition members in the community and also police officers, lots of people are taking Xanax in South San Francisco, and we see that as a very big issue. So I want to come out today and really support the county's efforts today to hold manufacturers more responsible. I also want to say that prescription drop-off in South San Francisco is pretty inconvenient because it's only at the police station. I think it makes a lot of sense to have this also at pharmacies that people frequent, such as Target, CVS, Walgreens, etc. Make it more accessible, add more language, and also encourage the manufacturers to advertise this on TV, have TV spots, have it in multiple languages, just make it more accessible to people because there is a demand for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Carlos Gutierrez.
Good afternoon. My name is Carlos Gutierrez. I'm with the Consumer Healthcare Products Association, and we are the over-the-counter medicine manufacturers. So we're non-prescription, we're not prescription. So anything from toothpaste, allergy medication, aspirin, that's who we represent. We agree consumers should have a way to properly dispose of their medications. We disagree that this is the way to go. Therefore, we're opposed to its introduction. And we're opposed on three main fronts. Number one, if you're an environmentalist, frankly, you should be opposed to this. As a recent University of Michigan study stated, the carbon footprint associated with these programs is actually worse than the status quo. And the DEA, the EPA, the FDA, even the relatively liberal World Health Organization all suggest that in-home trash disposal is not only adequate, but appropriate. And remember, we're talking about parts per trillion of trace amounts that you're finding in the water supply. And there is no data to suggest that that is there outside of human excretion. In other words, we're using the bathroom. That's why it's in the water. Number two, public safety, which I think that is what seems to be the main reason for the ordinance here today. Disposal really doesn't address a lot of the examples that you've heard earlier. Because whether a medication is unwanted, whether it's expired, whether you're currently using it, if you're not storing it appropriately, you're always going to run the risk of it being diverted. So certainly there could be education of the consumer. We've engaged with the CDC on up and away and out of sight on a campaign that educates parents on maintaining their medications up and away and out of sight of children. Number three, affordability. Over-the-counter medications are a main source of healthcare for a lot of individuals, and this will just add cost to that, make it more difficult for them. That I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you. Thanks. Reese Isbell.
Good afternoon. My name is Reese Isbell. I'm with Bay Bio, the Northern California Life Science Association. We were pleased to have a meeting with Supervisor Tissier about in February to go over some details about our concerns with the possibility of this legislation. We'd love to have the opportunity to get you each further information on those concerns, as well as provide some further details before this moves to introduction, so that we can have those conversations with you. There are concerns. For instance, Supervisor Slocum, you mentioned a pharmacy in North Fair Oaks. There's nothing in this language that mandates that a pharmacy has to participate. It is strictly voluntary on their part. We are left as the manufacturers to try to put together a program with pharmacies that we hope volunteer and work with us. But there's no mandate for that to happen at any location. So that's one example of concerns we have related to this language, and we'd love to have the opportunity to speak with you further. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dr. Mary Lorenis. I'd like to address some of the issues regarding environmental concerns. It is true that a lot of medications are excreted through your urine and your bowels, but there is also a lot of concern with actual physical medication, the tablets, etc., getting into our water system, and that's what this addresses. And as a person who actually works with seniors who have addiction problems as well as on medications, I would love to be able to offer them this information on how they can properly dispose of the medications they need to get rid of. Right now, I don't have much to tell them. 2 years ago, I got involved in being a trustee of a trust of a gentleman who passed away from cancer. When I went in to clean up his house, I filled up, and I kid you not, if you remember the old paper bags, full, 1.5 bags full of medication. This included morphine patches, lidocaine patches, more narcotics than you can shake a stick at, antibiotics, anxiety medications. I also found that 2 years previously to that, his wife had passed away from cancer. He had all of her medications. If I would have taken all of that medication, put it in my trash, if the raccoons would have gotten into my trash, which they typically do, and all of that would have ended up in the environment, down the street, into the ocean. I'm sorry, I think safe disposal of medications is critical, it's vital. All these other concerns can be addressed in different ways. I strongly support, and I ask the public to strongly support safe medication disposal. And if you have any questions about any of this, I would love to speak with Mr. Reese and the other gentleman. Thank you.
Good afternoon, President Groom, Supervisors, Mr. Maltby, Mr. Byers. My name is Alma Zamora. I'm the commander of the San Mateo County Narcotic Task Force, and I'm here in support of this ordinance and speak on behalf of the sheriff. Prescription drug abuse is the fastest growing problem in this nation. According to the National High Intensity Drug Area, the Drug Enforcement Administration, and the National Drug Threat Assessment. In San Mateo, we've also seen the effects. To give you an example of how this problem has affected our county, in 2008, San Mateo County Narcotic Task Force investigated 374 cases. Of those cases, it was less than 10% that involved pharmaceutical drugs. During that year, the task force seized 128 OxyContin pills, 225 Vicodin tablets, each estimated at a $20 street value. Last year, the San Mateo County Narcotic Task Force seized 1,548 OxyContin, 143 Vicodin, 64 hydrocodone, 140 other prescription tablets. Last year, the street value of a 80 milligram OxyContin tablet was $80. There are no conclusive estimates as to the total amount of illegally diverted prescription drugs in San Mateo County. Much like abuse of illegal drugs, we often see other crimes motivated by prescription drug addiction, including theft, identity theft, residential burglary, vehicle burglary, robbery, and most recently the burglary of different pharmacies such as CVS and Walgreens. Also, as is the case statewide, locally, we have also seen an increase in impaired driving as a result of prescription drugs. The types of drugs most commonly abused are opioids, pain relievers such as Vicodin, OxyContin, Percocet, also stimulants for treating attention deficit disorders such as Adderall, Concerta, or Ritalin. Again, I just want to state that I am here in support of this ordinance, and again, I'm here on behalf of Sheriff Greg Monks. Thank you.
Thank you. Armetta Parker. Karen North.
Hi, my name is Karen North. I actually work for the City of Palo Alto at a regional wastewater treatment plant facility. I'm here representing the City of Palo Alto, which treats some of East Palo Alto, which is in San Mateo County, but I'm also here representing the Bay Area Pollution Prevention Group, which represents 43 wastewater agencies in the San Francisco Bay region. We have been working on proper disposal of pharmaceuticals. Personally, I have myself since 2001, trying to develop an easy solution for residents. And we've been tracking this, and every resident says, should be easy, we're at point of sale, why can't you make this happen? And we keep on coming up with roadblocks, but many of those we have been basically taking them away. The DEA was the last one. So we have collection at our wastewater treatment plant. We also have it at the pharmacies. The pharmacy is the most effective place. But the problem is it shouldn't be local taxpayer money footing the bill. People are concerned about the environmental impacts of environmental impacts of pills. Well, I actually saw pills in our grit. So I work at the facility and I saw pills when I was first started there in the early 2000s. So people were flushing them down the toilet. We're hoping that our education and outreach has stopped people from flushing them down the drain because we really need to handle the low-hanging fruit. Basically take it out of their waste stream, and incineration right now is the best environmentally friendly option. If you put it in the trash, most of our trash is in sorting stations. So someone is going to be pilfering through that trash trying to sort it out, and they might be exposed to it. There's been people on lines where they get big dust clouds in their face, and then they have to deal with it. I just had a staff person last week open up our medicine bin, got a cloud of dust. I called the fire department, had her checked out, because we had no idea what got dumped in our medicine bin. So really having it at point of sale, having the manufacturers that create these drugs pay for the disposal, they will find the most effective, cost-effective, cheapest way to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan Heestand.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Susan Heestand, and I am here representing Silicon Valley Clean Water, which is the wastewater treatment plant in Redwood Shores. We treat all the water in the southern San Mateo County cities, including West Bay Sanitary District, which is Menlo Park, Atherton, parts of Portola Valley and East Palo Alto, and Woodside, and Redwood City, San Carlos, and Belmont. So, as you are aware, the common practice in the past is to flush the unwanted medications down the drain. This gets them quickly out of the home and away from the danger of anyone accidentally or unintentionally taking them. In the more recent years, we've realized with more accurate water quality analysis that these are going through our water treatment plants and getting into our environment, or even worse, back into drinking water supplies. With pollution prevention, we want to get them out of the waste stream to begin with. So as Heather mentioned, many studies have been done and have found pharmaceuticals in the environment by the USGS, and we should use the precautionary principle to protect the public health in the environment, and err on the side of caution, not putting them into landfills, not flushing them, but finding a disposal method that will take them out of the environment. And like Karen said, incineration is the best way. There's evidence that the pharmaceuticals are getting into water. They enter the sewer system from excretion of partially metabolized medications or through flushing. Sometimes people will put them in the landfills. That's one of the recommendations. The landfill leachate is brought to our wastewater treatment plant. So we get the San Mateo, the former Belmont, Menlo Park leachate right now at our treatment plant, and also much of the Half Moon Bay, Ox Mountain. We at San Mateo, at Silicon Valley Clean Water, support this ordinance and hope that you will do it, and that the pharmaceutical companies can be responsible and good citizens in our county.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's our last speaker card, Supervisor Tissier.
Thank you very much. I certainly appreciate all that have come out, including those from Bay Bio and other concerns. I think, as was mentioned earlier, the DEA has been the obstacle for a long time, and they, I believe, also recognize that now is the time and took the roadblocks away, so we actually can create a disposable program that goes well beyond what we've been able to do with our law enforcement agencies. So I know there may be other comments, but I really do think the time has come to introduce this ordinance, and at the appropriate time, I would actually like to introduce the ordinance today.
Okay, anybody else? Supervisor Pine?
I just had a couple additional questions, if I may. So I had one kind of on the implementation and a couple on the legal side. So it was mentioned that in some other jurisdiction, lots and lots of pharmacies have kind of placed collection bins. Because when I first heard 5, I said, "Man, that doesn't sound like a lot." But I would think that as a service to their customers, these pharmacies would really want to put these collection receptacles there. So then, does the management plan somehow call upon, broadly defined industry to somehow figure out how to go collect all that? Because I assume we're going to have this in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pharmacies, if I heard correctly about how our local pharmacies are likely to respond. I hope so, because I want to drop it off at the pharmacy I go to. mean, I'll go to another one, but I'd rather drop it off at the one I go to.
So Supervisor Brennan, I agree that many of the pharmacies will voluntarily participate, as we've seen with other types of programs. When there's collection activities at retail sites, many retailers will decide to participate, knowing that that'll increase foot traffic. Secondly, in regards to how the producers will manage the waste after the fact, that'll be included in their producer responsibility plan to let us know exactly how they'll manage the waste, where they'll be disposing of that material, and the method in which they'll be collecting it on a regular routine basis.
So the plan would speak to the process for periodically going to these pharmacies to get to pick up the unneeded medications.
Correct.
Okay. So on the legal side, I know one question that we'll hear, and it's addressing some of the materials we've been given, but probably worth discussing here briefly is we're proposing to do this countywide, not just in our unincorporated areas, and maybe you could just speak to that. I think we're on pretty solid footing there, but maybe our legal counsel could talk to that. Because typically, oftentimes, many things we do are restricted to unincorporated, but in many other areas like hazardous waste and such, we work in the incorporated cities as well.
Thank you, Supervisor Pine. This is Manali Sheth from County Counsel's office. I'm happy to address that question because that is a question that other folks have raised. And the answer is that there isn't a crystal clear answer, but we believe there's a strong legal basis in California statute, specifically the California Medical Waste Management Act, which allows local government, like the county, to implement their own medical waste management programs. And the Safe Medicine Disposal Ordinance that Environmental Health is proposing today, that the county adopt, would be an addition or an extension to the county's existing medical waste management program. The reason that's important is because the State Department of Health Services has already designated the county as a countywide local enforcement agency for purposes of their medical waste management program. And to the extent that incorporated areas, i.e. cities, have not designated or authorized their own local health officer or environmental health department to take on that role, the default is that the county would be the local enforcement agency, and that would be the basis by which the county would have jurisdiction, not just in the unincorporated areas, but the incorporated areas as well. In addition, this is the approach that was taken by Alameda County.
Just answer my next question, yeah.
Yes, and so, and there's been no challenge on that basis. They did the same analysis and came to the same conclusion.
Okay. And then on the state side, it was mentioned that legislation at the state level failed. I think it was, you said SB 1014. How did that legislation compare to what we're trying to do? Was it kind of very similar, or are we being more strict than what the state was going to put forward? Or, because I assume eventually we're going to see, and perhaps there's legislation brewing again. I would think that it's going to keep coming back.
I can just preliminarily answer the question, and then I'm going to actually defer it to Wayman because he's more familiar with the specifics. But my understanding on SB 1014 is that it started out probably embodying the same sort of terms and conditions that we're proposing today, but it went through various iterations and got watered down significantly. And I think that's sort of what was the impetus for the author of the bill to pull out. I think there actually is a pending bill that adopts, I don't know who the author is. I think it's AB 1159. Is that correct? The number? That's a different bill, but it's a bill that has the extended product responsibility model and applies it to sharp wastes and batteries. And so that's a bill that obviously isn't addressing pharmaceutical drugs or specifically, but is adopting the same sort of EPR model that we're proposing here today, and it's pending before the legislature. But I'll turn it to Wayman to address it in further detail.
I'm not sure if there's much for me to add. Essentially, she did. Manali did answer the question. Essentially, it was SB 1014 was a very similar model using EPR as the basis for medicine collection. As she mentioned, AB 1159 is also using that same EPR model for addressing sharps and batteries. So we could see that statewide they're attempting to use EPR to address many different waste disposal issues.
Madam Chair, if I might, I don't know if you did, but I received a letter from the author of that legislation indicating that the climate in Sacramento did not lend itself to being able to accomplish this. Obviously, there's a heavy lobbying presence, and actually respectfully requested us to take it up here, as well as Alameda having taken it up. So, you know, obviously, I know saw in the newspaper they were worried about patchwork quilt way of operating, but you know, the fact of the matter, if you recall, when the privacy bill came out, and at that time it was Jackie Spear asked the city to do it, the county to do it, and others. Sometimes you have to do it from the locals up, or it never happens because the lobbying in Sacramento is atrocious. So I just want to mention that because you may have seen that letter. I'm not sure. I know I got it.
Thank you, Supervisor Slocum.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to quickly thank the staff for all the hard work. I know it's been a long journey. Your contributions are appreciated. I just thank Supervisor Tissier and Groom for their hard work. I know you started on this back in early 2004 or 5, so it's been a long road. I congratulate you for your vision, and I'm prepared to vote for the ordinance.
Just one comment. I actually like to thank the people who testified. To be candid, I didn't realize how much stuff was being collected, especially at San Mateo. The San Mateo police sergeant who talked about the amount of stuff that is being collected is just astounding. So I'd also like to commend the staff as well as Supervisor Tessier for doing this. And I actually want to just, as Supervisor Slocum talked about North Fair Oaks only having one pharmacy. The coast side is actually really very spread out. So the idea of having 5 separate locations and not necessarily restricting them to pharmacy, because I think we might have one in Half Moon Bay. We have absolutely nothing on the south coast. Even the north coast is pretty spread out. So having other locations besides pharmacies is really, I think, important to making this program work. But I'm also prepared to support this as well.
Okay.
It's the appropriate time. I'd like to make a motion to adopt the ordinance.
Second.
If I can find it.
Everyone in favor?
I might suggest a slight amendment. It's a motion to introduce the ordinance.
Yes. I'm sorry.
And it's to add chapter 4.116 to title 4 of the San Mateo County Ordinance Code, and waive the reading of the ordinance in its entirety.
Took the words right out of my mouth.
Okay. All right. So this will begin the process of now moving forward through this. I want to also thank everybody who was here today. We appreciate your testimony, both for and against, and thanks very much to our staff.
And I too want to thank everybody. They did a lot of heavy lift. This is the second item today that I asked them, could you get it done a little bit sooner? So I'm sure they'll be happy to get rid of me. But thank you for all the work that you've done. Tremendous job.
I'm not sure that you guys actually took a vote.
Aye.
This adjourns our Board of Supervisors meeting for today.